Hello and welcome into Suits and Laterals. I'm Mitch Katsky, joined as always by my trusty co-host, my good friend Evan Skillner. How are you doing, Evan?
Awesome. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. It was a good Thursday. There's some good football on tonight. We won't get into that too much because this probably won't be posted until Friday, but we do have a few, not previews, but just some things that we'd like to highlight for the week ahead. We've had a couple of weeks off here, Ev. Just with the World Series and a lot going on, we've taken a couple of steps away, but we are back. We are looking forward, not backward. So we will, things in the past, we'll just leave them there. We're going to move on ahead. We're entering the second half of the season, but the NFL's got a big issue on its hands. Ratings. What do you know?
Well, I know the ratings are dropping, and it's been a big topic of conversation as of late. And, I've been hearing about it. I haven't thought a whole lot about it because my mind, honestly, has been on baseball. If you didn't know, I'm a big Indians fan, and it's been nice to see them in the World Series. So I haven't focused a whole lot on it. But last night, while watching the World Series and listening to some of the coverage leading up to it, everyone was talking about how the ratings for this game, Game 7, would probably be the highest rated basically they're saying Game 7 will be the highest rated game of all time, possibly in baseball. So that brought the NFL ratings back to the forefront of my mind. And I really think that there are two reasons that the NFL ratings are dropping. I think two big reasons at least. And so I'm going to kind of get into that. And, on this show, we kind of like to go back and forth. But I think if you don't mind, I'll just kind of take it for a little bit.
No, you can take it. That's by any means. I will just say that the big reason, because I don't think you're going to mention this, the big reason I think that NFL ratings have been down so much is just the nice weather that we're having. I don't want to speak for the entire country because I don't know what's going on, but the weather up here in Southeast Michigan has been beautiful. So I know personally my Sunday afternoons have not been spent in front of the TV as they normally are. I've been out doing stuff with friends and family just because it's been such nice weather that we're having.
Okay.
I think that plays a part.
Yeah, okay. I'll give you my two reasons, and obviously feel free to chime in and let me know what you think. But, first of all, Richard Sherman very recently said that, someone asked him why the ratings are down, and he said that the league's not fun anymore. And I think we kind of talked about that a couple weeks ago, and I think he's absolutely right. I think if you look at the disparity between the ratings for college football and NFL football, it's almost mesmerizing. Same sport, hugely different ratings. But the truth is, you got to think about what separates college football from the NFL, and that's dynamic plays and dynamic players. Okay, we saw last year. Let's think back to last year: Virginia Tech, Ohio State, and Braxton Miller's awesome spin move around two defenders. Right? I mean that was sick. Earlier in this season, we saw Lamar Jackson hurdle a defender, stay on his feet, and walk into the end zone, and that happens frequently. But if you look at the NFL, you don't really see those dynamic plays and see those dynamic players, okay? And some people would say, well, it's always been like that. Well, not really. I mean, when I first started watching football at a young age, we had Barry Sanders to watch, okay? Barry Sanders, if you haven't seen much of him, look up his highlight reel because it's unbelievable what he was able to do to NFL defenders. Okay, then a little bit after him we had Michael Vick. Michael Vick was the Lamar Jackson of NFL football. He was dynamic. He was fun to watch. He was just outstanding. And then beyond him, we had some of those great quarterbacks like Brett Favre, Peyton Manning, guys that weren't necessarily flashy or elusive, but guys that kind of had I don't know, a unique style about them, right? Peyton Manning put up huge numbers. Brett Favre was kind of a wild slinger, and just really fun guys to watch. And those guys have kind of left the game. And another big reason, I think, is they've taken the hitting out of the game. We used to, and I'm sure you're the same way, Mitch, but I used to love watching football on NFL or on Sunday, and watching guys like Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, James Harrison, guys like that just absolutely laid a licking to the offense, to the opposing offense. And I used to live for those passes over the middle just to see a receiver get clobbered. Okay, and all of that's gone with the new rules. And I understand to an extent that you got to keep the players safe and that they're doing more research and realizing that some of these harder hits are almost basically ruining some guys' lives. But part of that's gone, and it's just not as attractive to watch. And the second reason basically that I think the ratings are dropping is because the game is the style of the game is changing, and the landscapes of games are changing. So it's funny because I've started to watch the NFL more as the ratings have dropped. And I've always been a big baseball fan. But let me start with the reason I love baseball so much. I love baseball because of the intricacies of the game. And I know you well enough, Mitch, to know that you're the same way.
Absolutely.
All 30 managers manage a different way. And I would guess that if you take 30 managers and give them one situation, you're going to get about 20 different ways to handle that situation. Okay. There's so much that goes into the game. And there's so many pauses to reflect on either what just happened or predict what's going to happen next. Every pitch, between every pitch, you get to think about either the pitch that the guy just threw or the pitch that he's about to throw. This happens every single pitch, and after every single hit, you get a 10 to 20 second break to just reflect. With the NFL, things are really slowing down, and the game is starting to change. And that goes back to the dynamic players and the dynamic plays. Look at the successful teams in the NFL right now. Okay, you have the Cowboys, you have the Eagles, the Vikings are slipping, and we'll talk about that later. But let's say the Vikings from the first 6 weeks of the season. Teams like that aren't winning by being flashy. Teams like that are winning from being conservative and safe. They run the ball. They average 4 to 5 to maybe 6 yards per rush. They make short passes to the slot or over the middle. And they dink and dunk their way down the field to score touchdowns. And they play great defense. So on the other side of the ball, you're not seeing their opposition put up big numbers of points. Okay? So if you see where I'm going here, basically what I'm saying is the game is definitely more boring for someone that likes to see the dynamic stuff. But for guys like me and you as well, Mitch, the game is more attractive because there's more intricacy or it's a more intricate game. So I think that people are just getting bored of seeing the same play over and over again and of not seeing the Michael Vicks or the Barry Sanders or Peyton Manning's gone now. And it's just that they're not seeing these big plays. And the game is boring. You're not keeping their attention. Look at some of the social media that's popular now. Quick tweets that are 100, what are they now, 160 characters?
I think they're still 140, but yeah.
140, yeah, sorry. So 140 character tweets. You have Vine that's going away now. That was a 7-second video. Okay, you have Instagram videos that I think are 15 seconds or so. But attention spans are going down, And the NFL and their players aren't doing anything to keep the attention of the average fan. And I think it's just a more boring game that isn't adjusting to the way fans want to watch.
Okay, so I have a lot to respond to here, obviously. First of all, let me start off with your superstar, the point about the superstars. I think that comes down to basically the narrowing of the gap between those superstar players and the rest of the league. Whereas before, there were clear-cut guys that you knew were the best in the business at their position, on their team, whatever it may be. Now you're seeing the mediocre players, the good, the average players. They are not as good, but they are better than their counterparts from previous decades, from previous eras. I think just the quality of the NFL player as a whole. You pick the 45th guy off your roster, and he can probably go in there and do an all right job. Whereas before, maybe that wasn't the case. So I think that's my immediate response to your first point.
So your response is that players are just better
I think,
than they used to be.
Yeah, I think your superstars basically don't stick out as much because that talent gap is not nearly as big as it was in previous eras.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I left out actually earlier when I talked about the difference between the NFL game and the NCAA game. You see these guys that make these dynamic spin moves and these great jukes. Like, look at Reggie Bush when he was in college compared to when he got to the NFL. The guy was, I won't say terrible in the NFL, but he was a bit of a letdown because he didn't dominate guys as much as he did in college football. And that's because your defenders are all much better than they were in college football. So, we don't have to talk about – there's always been a difference between the college game and the NFL game. But I'm just saying, like you said, players are better and your good players don't stick out as much. And that's why I referenced Barry Sanders and Michael Vick. Those two guys, they did stand out. They were completely dynamic and made the best defenders in the world look silly.
My second point, you just hit it right on the head. The college and the pro game are different. They're set up differently. Success is measured differently. Obviously, every team wants to go out and win every game. But I think in the NFL, there's obviously much more of an emphasis on making money, whereas in college, I think it still is, though there is money being made, and those are a whole different set of issues. I still think the focus, at least from a player and coach standpoint, is to prepare yourself for the next level, whether that's the NFL or whatever profession you decide to go into. The NFL, there really is no tomorrow. You're here, you're playing, we're going for it, and this is it. So I think that has a lot to do with it as well.
I'll buy that.
And just where these guys are in the stages of their lives. You're looking at a 31-year-old linebacker who's been in the league for 7 years. He's obviously got a much different mindset than the 18-year-old that just showed up on campus 6 months ago and all of a sudden is starting in his first semester in college. So the way that those guys go about playing the game, totally different. I think the college game is a much more passionate, I don't want to say reactionary, but there's not as much deep thought that goes into it. And you touched on it a little bit with the comparison to baseball. It's a very mental sport in the NFL. There's a ton that goes into each decision in between the play, whether you're huddling or not. And I think some of that is hard to see when you're watching on TV, it's hard to present that to an audience on TV, and that has probably got a lot to do with the troubles that the NFL is going through right now.
Absolutely. So let's take a break from football. First of all, if you want to weigh in on the ratings, we'd love to hear from you. Love to hear what you think. I've heard so many different theories. Roger Goodell has no idea. NFL players don't know. I mean, Richard Sherman took a stab at it when he said it's not fun anymore, but we'd love to hear what you had to say. Break from football. Just real quick. Let's take a breather. Are you, we like to talk about what we're drinking, the drink of the day.
We do like to do that.
What do you have in your cup? Anything?
I got to be honest, it's just water right now.
Yeah.
But once we finish the show, I've got a 6-pack of a local brew around here. It's called Ghetto Blaster. It's made in Detroit, and it's phenomenal. I don't know if you can get it anywhere else other than the Metro Detroit area, but if you can, look it up. It's brewed by Motor City Brewing Works Company, I believe.
Okay.
And yeah, it's very good. It's got a unique flavor. You've never had a beer like this.
Right on.
What about you? What do you got?
Yeah, so in my refrigerator, I had 2 Miller Lights left. It's a bit bittersweet because I was saving those Miller Lights for an important Miller time that generally happens in Indians games. But basically, the end of baseball season brings the end of Miller Lite season for me. It's been that way for a couple years, and it just so happens that the Indians had Andrew Miller. So these are probably my last 2 Miller Lights until the spring. The winter brings 2 beers. I associate, and this is weird, but I associate PBR with the NBA, and I associate Molson's.
I don't get that, but okay.
It's there's no rhyme or reason. It's just one of those things that I was probably drinking a 6-pack of PBR one time while watching a good NBA game, and it went well together, and that's what happened. The other one makes more sense, but the other winter beer is Molson's Canadian Lager for me, and that obviously has to do with all the hockey that I watch. So
yeah, no doubt.
Last 2 Miller Lights, raising my glass to a great Major League Baseball season. I'm gonna miss it. I'm gonna miss the playoffs. It's the first October since 2007 that I can remember being totally into. So that's that. But we can get right back into it.
Yeah, that's that. And baseball is over, unfortunately. So let's jump back into football because the Steelers are in Baltimore with first place on the line. And, Evan, it looks like Ben Roethlisberger might be returning sooner than we originally predicted. With the report coming out today that he has been limited in practice, but looks like he will be under center this Sunday. And for me, so long as he's medically cleared, I don't see how you hold him out of this game. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, they clearly struggle with Landry Jones in the game. And now, last week, I think they would have lost to the Patriots either way, with or without Roethlisberger. But I think he's the heart and soul of the team. And if he can get in the game and he can play, you're better off. You're better off with a gimpy Ben Roethlisberger because that guy can sling the football around and he can lead a team like very few NFL quarterbacks can. So about an hour ago, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette said that he will likely play, and I believe it, and I think the Steelers don't have a problem against the Ravens if so.
Yeah, there really is no other guy that I can think of who's taken the team on his back more than Roethlisberger in the past few years, having been injured for a lot of that time. It's easy for guys to come out and do it week after week when there's, when they got a clean pocket and they're standing up all day. But Ben gets hit. He gets hit a lot. Guys go after him hard because he's bigger than a lot of the defenders that he comes across. He takes hard hits, and he keeps getting back up. And though I don't really like him as a player, just something about him bothers me. I do respect the man a ton, and I got to hand it to him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's been, some people will say, well, don't forget about Tom Brady. Well, Tom Brady, not that Roethlisberger's team isn't good around him, but Tom Brady's been just so solid in the same system for so long. And again, we're going to draw comparisons, and we're going to say, well, so is Roethlisberger, and you're right, but Le'Veon Bell went out with an injury last year, and Roethlisberger still led his team to a very successful season. It's just those two guys are close. I guess it would be really hard to sit here in an argument with someone that wants to argue that Tom Brady is a better leader and has done more for his team, but I really don't think there's anyone like Roethlisberger. The hits that he takes, the size that Roethlisberger is, this is kind of the Cam Newton conversation, right? So Roethlisberger's huge, and he takes some huge hits. But unlike Newton, Roethlisberger keeps getting back up. He might complain a little bit to the refs. Every quarterback does. But he keeps getting up, and he goes on and he plays the next play. If you watch Tom Brady for just one game, if he gets hit or even breathed on wrong, he falls over and looks at the referee like, hey, let's go, throw the flag. And not that makes him any less of a leader, but I think that makes him less impressive.
I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that he was the one who got taken out by the Chiefs however many years ago it was and had to sit out the entire season. That was the Matt Castle season for the Patriots. But going back to that Roethlisberger versus Brady, who's your pick? I think those couple of instances, the couple of instances that we've seen with the Patriots being without Brady and still producing the wins that they did, I believe that was an 11-5 season with Matt Castle. And we know what just happened in the first first 3 games. They lost the fourth one, but the first 3 games without Brady this year, he was sitting out with that suspension. The Patriots are still good, and it's the system, and it's Belichick, and we keep talking about it. But that right there, I think, proves, at least to me, why Brady is better than Roethlisberger, but I think in terms of value to his team and being a leader and really the quarterback that is needed most by his team is Ben Roethlisberger.
Right. So
speaking of quarterback controversy.
Okay, you go.
Yeah, speaking of quarterback controversy, the Cowboys, winners of 6 straight now, are headed to Cleveland this weekend, and Dak Prescott will be starting. Tony Romo is still working his way back to full health. But this week, owner Jerry Jones had something pretty interesting to say. He says, you want to be very mindful of what you got going, which right now, we got a lot of chemistry going. That has to be really recognized if you're making a decision. And I think Jerry Jones finally, for once in his life, realized that it's not his decision to make. And regardless of how much he likes Romo and how he feels like maybe he and his team owe it to the long-standing face of the franchise, the best move, unquestionably at this point, is to stick with Dak Prescott.
Absolutely. Dak has been the man for Dallas, and he was put, and we talked about this at the beginning of the season, but he was put in a great situation. He is behind the best offensive line in the NFL. He's in a great system with great pieces in place as far as Ezekiel Elliott goes, of course. But even some of his receivers and Jason Witten. Jason Witten is one of the best non-quarterback leaders, offensive leaders in the game. He's such a great professional veteran, and I'm sure without being in the locker room, I make this assumption, but I'm sure Jason Witten has played a big part in Dak's confidence and poise. And those receivers are great. Des Bryant's been hurt, and Cole Beasley has stepped up and been great. Terrence Williams has been awesome, and it's a great system. And there's no reason to fix the Cowboys right now. They have one loss. Their quarterback hasn't thrown an interception, and they just beat who many thought were the best team in their division in overtime.
I think the biggest part of it, though nobody's really been saying much about it, is the defense. It's the other side of the ball that's keeping the other team honest and not letting them just go down the field and score at will, because that was the issue last year. Tony Romo was out a lot of the year, but that defense was atrocious. The last couple of seasons, they were really bad. And finally, they figured something out. They're getting stops, and they're letting Dak and Ezekiel Elliott run the ball and work their offense without having to worry about playing catch-up and putting a lot of points on the board quickly. They're letting them play at their pace, and I think that's huge.
Absolutely. So how about staying in that division? Let's go Eagles-Giants.
Can I have fun first?
Can you have fun?
Can I have some fun first?
Have you not been having fun?
Well, no. Can I do something ridiculous?
Okay.
I have no legitimate football reason as to why, but I think the Browns get their first win.
This weekend?
Yeah.
Okay.
They blew a 20-7 halftime lead against the Jets last week. And I don't need to remind you what just happened to Cleveland's baseball team. And like I said, I have no legitimate football reason as to why. But this looks like a game that the Browns absolutely should not win. And because of that, I think that they will.
Okay. Well, I'm not even going to comment on that because I think it's absurd. All right. So there you have it. Hot take. Browns beat Cowboys. Week 9 NFL action.
There you go.
So let's talk Eagles-Giants then.
Yes.
The
battle of 4 and 3 East teams. They're trying to keep
the
Cowboys.
The Eagles just lost in overtime. I still like the Eagles, but I'm curious what you think.
I got to go with the Eagles just because we've talked about it before. Carson Wentz looks like he's figuring some things out on the fly. It's impressive. And really, I'm just not a believer in the G-men. I think their whole style has gotten kind of stale. And, it's the same team with the New York Giants. It's the same team year in, year out. They're 8-8. They're, maybe 10-6. But really, it's the same team with Eli Manning doing what he can, not a whole lot of help around him. And they don't have the same defense that, with Michael Strahan and Osi Umenyiora and Jason Pierre-Paul. I know it's still there, but it's not the same. And I just, if you're asking me right now who I give the edge to, it'd be the Eagles because they do have the defense. Jim Schwartz is, he's got those guys playing well, and they don't have to blitz. They're rushing for a lot of times, and they're getting pressure with the defensive line on the opposing quarterbacks, and that's letting the secondary just kind of hang back and play zone or soft man and adjust to whoever catches the ball, make the tackle. And they're playing really well right now. So I'm going with the Eagles.
Yep, I'm all over the Eagles as well. I don't know what it is with the Giants, man. They're 3-4. Beginning of the year, I would have told you they have all the pieces to win the division, and they just haven't played well. I think obviously they had the Odell Beckham Jr. Drama in the middle of the season, or I guess the middle of the first 8 weeks. And
that's ongoing. That's going to continue the rest of his career, I believe.
I don't know. I mean, he's been good the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, sure, he's been good. We know he's a good player.
We'll see.
But there's always going to be
I
the
think
drama.
I think his attitude's been good too. I think if he does get it turned around, the drama will go away and all will be well for him in the kicking net. But I think going forward, I don't see the Giants beating the Eagles, and I don't see them keeping pace in the East. And I think that means they miss out on the playoffs this year. So it's unfortunate, and I really did feel like the trio of Victor Cruz and Beckham Jr. and rookie Sterling Shepard would be everything that Eli Manning needs to make another run at a Super Bowl. I obviously wasn't sure if they'd get all the way to it, but they should be a better team, and they're not. So it's disappointing.
Matt Stafford's Lions will play their first game in that new Space Station Stadium they got going on in Minnesota. And Evan, we recorded a show a couple of weeks ago that never aired, in which I laid out my reasons why Stafford is a top 5 QB right now. That was a hot discussion a couple of weeks ago, last week, before the Lions lost, of course, to the Texans. So how about this? If the Lions win, that's a big if, because it is still the Detroit Lions. But if the Lions win, I'll revisit that discussion and tell everybody why they need to pay Matthew Stafford a lot more respect than they seem to be willing to do. Does that sound fair?
Yeah.
Okay, deal. Game of the week. The Broncos head to Oakland for a huge Sunday night showdown. 2 6-2 AFC West teams will be battling for sole possession of first place. Evan, what do you think about Derek Carr as an MVP candidate?
Well, that's a great question. I like Derek Carr a lot. I just am not sure if he has the team around him to impress people enough to get the nod as the MVP, but I definitely think he has the skills and the stats at this point to be MVP. He's third in the NFL in passing yards. Passing touchdowns, fifth in passing yards. He's just coming off a 500-plus yard performance with 4 touchdowns. Now, a couple of those yards and one of those touchdowns came in overtime, but nonetheless, that's good for 9th place all time for single-game passing yards. Yeah,
that was a special performance. He led his team to an overtime road win despite 23 accepted penalties against the Raiders. That's an NFL record.
Absurd. Yeah, absolutely absurd. And yeah, so as far as MVP candidate goes, the guy's been a leader. He's led his team to some impressive wins. I just think, and it's unfortunate, but I think the way the league has been, the MVP goes to someone like Tom Brady, even though he's missed 4 weeks, that leads his team to 1 or 2 loss season.
So it's a popularity contest.
It is. A large portion of it is a popularity contest. Derek Carr doesn't have the appeal of a Tom Brady or an Aaron Rodgers. So, I like Derek Carr a lot. I think Matt Stafford is a great quarterback. But I think these guys just don't have the team around them or the appeal surrounding them to be in. Well, they might be in the MVP race, but to actually get the award.
One last thing before we get out of here. I know you've seen the Madden 17 commercial with Russell Wilson, Antonio Brown, and Von Miller. I just have to say, that's one of the funniest things on TV right now, because every time I see Von Miller sitting in that living room with that kid, and he just smacks the controller out of his hand and says, "Strip sack Miller." I lose it every time. It's hilarious.
That's one of my favorite commercials out there right now. And I think my favorite part about it is Marshawn Lynch coming in the end. And
yeah,
y'all need to work on your people skills. Like, coming from that guy, and I don't know if the average person that sees that commercial knows exactly what the meaning behind that is
Well,
or why that's so funny.
It's clearly a commercial geared towards a hardcore NFL.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like if I'm watching TV with my mom or with my wife and they see that, they definitely don't laugh as hard as I do
Right.
at the fact that a guy that never talks to the media just told other people to work on their people skills. That's just how it works. But yeah, that commercial is brilliant. Strip sack Miller. I love that.
That's going to do it for us. Ev, tell the people where they can find you.
Find me on Twitter. I actually have a new Twitter handle, and I need to get a hold of. Yeah, I do. I do actually. See, my website's called evanskilleter.com, so my Twitter handle is at evanskilleter. So find me at EVANSKILLITER. Email me at evan@suitsandlaterals.com. Check out some of my work on my website, evanskilleter.com, which I haven't updated lately because I've been so consumed by baseball. And also check out campuspressbox.com, where you can find work from myself and from Mitch Gatzke and from a lot of other great writers.
Yes, we do have some great writers on Campus Press Box. You can find me on Twitter at Great Gatzke, GATZKE. That's the same as it's been for years now. I'm not going anywhere. And Mitch at suitsandlaterals.com. You can also check me out on mitchgatzke.com. I'm working on transitioning to greatgatzke.com, but that's a very complicated process. We won't get into it.
It's all about personal branding.
Evan, I want to tell the people to support their local businesses, tip very handsomely, and what's the last thing? Oh, say your please and thank yous.
Exactly.
That's all.
Thank you so much for listening. This has been Suits and Laterals for Mitch Gatzke. I'm Evan Skilleter. Until next time, stay right and stay real.